I was scrolling through Facebook the other day, not even looking for content or ideas for this podcast, just catching up on my Facebook feed. And I came across a post from a friend of mine. He's owned a tux business for about 20 years, 2 decades. He's been in the same industry, proms, weddings, same type of customers, same rhythm for a long time. And in this post, he was talking about how because of the changes in the wedding industry and people and the time and just lots of different factors, he decided to make some pretty big changes to the annual wedding expo he's been putting on for about 2 decades, really. He talked about how scary it felt to change something that worked for so long. And that part didn't really surprise me. What did stick with me from reading his post was that he said he understood this isn't the end. It's a new beginning for him. He felt like it was a new life almost. And that post honestly stopped me and was like, wow, I want to talk about this. Because it got me thinking about how much running a business has changed over the last 20 years. I started my first business about 20 years ago. Now, I wasn't running it fully as a business then. It took me a while to really understand what that meant. But it's not just the tools that we use. It's not just the technology that's changed, but the way people find businesses, connect with them, and decide who they want to support. In a way, who they want to support has become more important again, often like it was a long time back where people wanted to support the local mom and pop. And that kind of went away when I was a kid for the 80s, 90s, and I feel like it's making a comeback. Welcome back to the Family First Entrepreneur Podcast. I'm your host, Heather Blake. Now, I do want to make a note here that this is like a conversation that I'm having, but I bullet pointed out what I want to talk about, and I'm sorry for the clanking. That is my radiator that is all of a sudden deciding it's going to chime in on this conversation. But I have notes on my screen below my camera. And so you'll see me looking down at those, and it's because I just don't want to miss anything. I feel like this is a really important conversation to have. And I don't want to miss what I thought about and what AI helps me to think about. Because I do use AI when I'm coming up with some content ideation. I tell it what I'm thinking about, what angle I want to take, and then tell me to give me some input or questions that I might be able to ask myself to come up with some more. So this is all notes from me and AI. So let's keep going. So after reading this post, I really started thinking about it, and I really started to wonder if a business that's been around for 20 years has to evolve to stay relevant. What does that mean for a business just starting out? And on the flip side, what happens if we don't evolve? Because if we keep running a business, if we're running our businesses the same way we did decades ago, we might be setting ourselves up to slowly fizzle out. Or if you're new, to never really get a spark at all. I want to say this early in the podcast because I think it matters, and I want to make sure that anyone that skips out because they don't have a time to finish it, that they hear this. Yes, working long hours is part of this conversation. It always has been. But I don't think that's the biggest change we really deal with. Yes, there was this day and age, and some people are still following that you have, if you run your own business, you have to work 80 plus hours a week. You have to be the one that does everything. I don't think that's true anymore. And if it is, it shouldn't be for you, right? We want to have a good ratio of time in our business, time with our family. that is important. I know I sometimes struggle with that a bit just because I do enjoy so much working, and I will, when I'm like, okay, I don't have something to do, let me go work on my business. But we don't have to feel that we need to put in 80 plus hours. There are other ways around it. But that's not the main way that business has changed over the last 20 years. I think what's actually happening is that the effort doesn't automatically lead to attention anymore. Right? So we put in all this work, and it doesn't mean that you're immediately seen. Before, you were only competing with people in your local area for the most part, or like infomercials online. Not online, infomercials on the TV. And yes, the internet did exist, so it's somewhat online. But the newspaper, who you're seeing in the yellow pages, things like that, that's who you were seeing and that's who you went to. But things have really changed. There was a time when if you worked hard, showed up consistently, and followed the formula, things worked. You were visible because there were fewer options, fewer voices, less noise. Now, I talk to business owners all the time who are doing everything they were taught to do, and they're still feeling invisible. They feel like they're lost in this sea of content creators and, videos, cat videos, and this and that. It feels like you're lost. You feel like you can't compete with Amazon. You feel like you can't compete with all the people on Instagram or the TikTok and their TikTok shop. And that's confusing to people because you're like, I'm doing everything I'm told to be doing. Especially if you've been in the business for a long time and you're like, I'm doing what was working, but it's not working anymore. Or if you're just starting out and you're already feeling like you're behind and lost. I think a lot of people quietly assume something must be wrong with them, when really the environment changed, and the environment keeps changing as what new technology comes out, as things like COVID hit. COVID has changed a lot for people. It has changed a lot of the way people think about things, right? Recessions or tariffs, different things like that, those change the way people think about things, where they spend their money and who they want to spend their money with, or, who are they going to support as a business? So think about the last few things you bought, not the necessities, not like I'm going to go buy toilet paper and groceries, but something you chose, a service, a product, a brand you were excited about. Chances are you didn't just look it up in the phone book, right? You probably didn't even search it. You noticed it first. You saw it a few times. You heard someone talk about it. You watched. You paid attention. You got familiar. I hear this all the time from people. I've been following you for a while. Now, I don't just hear this from my followers, but I hear it from the business owners that I talk to who hear it from others. And every time someone says that, I think that never used to be part of business. People don't just find businesses anymore. They get to know them. Trust is built before the transaction. Familiarity, there, you know what I mean, right? It comes before the sale. And that's a huge shift. So people used to think, I need a plumber. Let me look up in the yellow pages, plumbers. And you see A1 plumbing because people named their businesses how it would rank in the yellow pages. That's why you saw ABC, A1, things like that. 1, 2, 3. These are the things that are appearing first. That's all you had to worry about. They wanted a plumber. They looked up plumbers. Now, you're scrolling Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, whatever it is on social that you look up and get your content from, and you already had a friend suggest that you follow ABC Plumbing, or you saw ABC Plumbing talking about something they just did in your local area. Trust was built first. And this doesn't mean it's harder. It doesn't mean people are harder to convince that they need this, like that you need to buy from them. It just means that people are more intentional because we are bombarded by businesses, people selling things, people providing services. You're not, and yes, in a plumber, you are limited to the people around you. But if you want to buy handmade jewelry, you can go to Etsy. You don't have to go to a local craft fair anymore. You can go to Etsy. You can go to Amazon. You can go to, there's other handmade places, but, just Google search and come up with handmade jewelry. So when people buy, they're thinking more intentionally about the type that they want, all the qualifications that they want. That's very different than it used to be. So I mentioned COVID. I don't think we can talk about modern business without acknowledging it. COVID didn't just change how businesses operate. It changed what people valued or currently value. Time feels different now. Energy feels different. You're trying to protect it more. We are a few years out from COVID, but people were made more aware of how they spend their time and their money. I know I have said quite a few times to people, I miss COVID. And so many other people said the same. We didn't have to run here. We didn't have to run there. We could just stay home and spend time with family. My kids and I, we spent a whole lot of time out at the pool in the backyard. A whole lot of time at the pool. We didn't have 5,000 places to be. And that's different. It kind of reset people's thoughts on things. Yes, we do a lot of stuff now, but it still made me think, I don't have to leave my house if I don't want to, right? I can buy groceries online and just run and pick them up or have them delivered. If I want to say no to something so I can spend time at the pool with my kids, I'll say no. It's different. I don't think people forgot how to spend their money or their time before. I think they started asking why they were spending it. Why am I doing this? Why am I going here? Why am I going there? Why am I spending money on this? Why am I spending money on that? This is especially true right now with inflation. People start thinking about who they're supporting. And people are starting to think more about the local businesses. Well, I want this local business to succeed, so let me give them my money instead of some big, huge corporation. Why am I giving a multimillionaire my money when I can give it to someone who's trying to feed their family? What people are supporting matters more now. How something fits into their life matters more. Flexibility matters more. People want things that feel aligned with them, not just impressive or expensive. Yes, you still have people who buy something just because of what it is. But then you have all these other people who have really started thinking about this. And even when purchases are emotional or impulsive, they're often tied to identity, values, and meaning. That's a big shift from this is what we're supposed to do to this is what feels right now. This is what feels right for me. All right, so I mentioned my friend in the tux industry and the wedding expo. I wanted to give this as an example. Let's see, what did I write here? This is why the wedding industry example stuck with me so much. If you think back to weddings in the 90s, They followed, even in the early 2000s. I'm thinking about some weddings that I've been to in my life. They followed a pretty standard formula. Big guest lists. 300 people, 200 people. Formal timelines. This is what happens here. This is what I photographed wedding for years. The first wedding I ever photographed was in 2002. 24 years ago now. A lot has changed. The guest lists are different. The size of the wedding is different. Traditions, people didn't question them. Dollar dance, garter toss. Some of these were from when I was younger and were starting to fade away a bit, but bouquet, garter toss, people did those all the time. The wedding cake, people are getting more unique with their wedding cake now. Maybe they don't have a cake. Maybe they're doing an ice cream sundae. Maybe they're doing just a cupcake that they can cut and everyone else gets a dessert bar. It's different. People are starting to think about traditions and how to make a wedding more unique to themselves and more important for them and to the people around them. Now, like I'm saying, weddings look different. They're smaller. They're more personal. They're less about spectacle and tradition and more about experience and individualism. And the wedding industry didn't disappear. People didn't stop getting married, maybe for a short time during COVID. What changed were the assumptions. So when businesses in the industry struggle, it's not because they're bad at what they do. It's because the expectation shifted, and expectations drive decisions. That's true for weddings, and honestly, it's true for almost every industry. So what does this mean for business owners? I want to say this clearly. If something feels harder than it used to be, that does not mean you're failing. If you're just starting and feel overwhelmed, that doesn't mean you're late. You're not behind. Being in business for 20 years doesn't mean you're stuck doing things how you used to do it. Being new doesn't mean you have to listen to all the gurus who tell you that this is how I've done it for 20 years and this is how you need to do it too. It just means the way we build, communicate, and connect has evolved. And evolution doesn't erase experience. It gives it new relevance. So I want you to think about this. What is it that you're taught or that you've done that doesn't work that you can think about and shift? Like, okay, well, why doesn't this work? Think about when you walk into somebody's home. And you can walk in one person's home with certain draperies. And you're like, oh, this looks like my grandma's house. Because it was decorated in the 80s. You can walk into another home. Same style. Decorated differently. And you're like, oh, this is relaxing. This is relaxing. It all has to do with the way it evolved. Same type of home, the decor has evolved. It's shifted. It's not the same. I don't know if this analogy makes any sense to anyone. It did when I started. But what I'm saying is, it's still a home. But one made you feel like you were at grandma's house, and maybe that's a nostalgic feel. but you didn't feel that sense of, I'm going to relax. The other home you walked into and you're like, yeah, this is for me. Let me sit down. Let me take it in. I can relax here. Your business should be like the second house. If you've been running the business or being told to run the business, like so it looks like grandma's house, then you need to shift and update and figure out what things you need to change. Now, it doesn't mean you need to change everything all at once. Maybe you start with the couch. Maybe you start with the draperies. Then you add a new coat of paint to the walls. You don't have to change out the kitchen cabinets. Maybe you just give them a facelift. Some new hardware and a coat of paint. You can change things slowly, or you can do a complete renovation. But what I'm suggesting is that you take a look at these things that aren't working, whether it's because you've done them for 20 years or a guru who's been doing something, even something that's been done 5 years ago in like social media is different. It's not the same thing working. People are looking for connection. They're looking for a reason to buy from you. They are looking for things that align with them. Gone are the days of pulling out a phone book and going with the first person or the only person that offers what you want in your area. The businesses that are going to last aren't necessarily the biggest or the loudest. They're the ones that understand people. They're the ones willing to adapt, communicate differently, and grow alongside their customers. That Facebook post I mentioned earlier, it wasn't really about tuxes or the wedding expo. It was about awareness, about recognizing when something needs to change and being brave enough to see that as a beginning instead of an ending. So if you've been feeling like business just doesn't quite work the way you were taught, if you're building different than you imagined, if you're choosing alignment over hustle, that's not weakness. That's awareness. If this episode of the Family First Entrepreneur gave you language for something that you've been feeling but couldn't quite name, I'm really glad you're here. I'll see you next week.